Such an honor and privilege to be here before you today. What a wonderful invitation we received from Dwight and the Rice Forum to be here. I bring you greetings from St. Helena Island, way down yonder, down there. Yes, absolutely, coming from Penn Center National Historic Landmark District. And I wanted to make a quick correction. We just had a wonderful change of command at Penn Center. We have a new executive director there, just only shy of 5 months. And as he came on, I was the director of history, art, and culture. And I guess he saw a little something inside of me and moved me to development. But I have to tell you that I am a Gullah lady at heart, and history, art, and culture is so ingrained in me. And I'm so very grateful for the opportunity to move into this other position, to be able to talk intelligently about our culture and our history and the love of our arts. So forgive me, there's a little bit of school teacher in me, and I may ask you a couple of questions. So we are going to be talking about Penn Center's role in promoting and preserving contemporary art forms, still within within our culture. And I say our culture because although I have some admixture in me, quite a bit of it, I definitely refer to myself as a Gullah lady. Maybe some of that will come out within my speech. But Penn Center National Historic Landmark District is a beautiful 50-acre historic district. We got this designation in 1974, and it speaks to the history of Civil War, the founding of Penn School, Reconstruction, even before, after Reconstruction, citizenship schools, and then the Civil Rights Movement. And it's just a wonderful history. Not only are there buildings that we have, about 19 historic buildings and structures on the campus that are true to the history of the founding of Penn School in 1862, but what is so important to know is that those students, with their hands, under the leadership of the carpentry instructors, built the buildings. So you can see a few of the buildings here, our dock area, and then some of the students within one of the buildings. So Penn Center's mission is to promote and preserve the history, art, and culture. And this translates in every single program, every educational offering that we have. And I guess that's still why it's still so ingrained within me. As a personally, I'm also a visual artist. I paint with pastels and oils. And you can't help but to recognize the beauty of our Lowcountry in South Carolina, and the beauty of the culture, and the beauty of the people that are within the culture. And there's this quote that I just love: without memory, there we go, that's the one. There is no culture. Without memory, there's no civilization. Without memory, there's no society. No memory, no future. So all of this is very important. The people on our island and the people that we represent have such a wonderful, rich memory of their ancestors. In 1861, we had these wonderful images taken very early. The Union forces came through in 1861. We started getting images that early of the people. First we were called slaves, then we took on the name of contraband. And in 1862, when the schools started becoming available, education, people were able to catch that learning, we started to be called freedmen. And these are some of the freedmen. Now, the images that you see within the first part of my presentation, all of these you can find just by Googling Penn School papers. And we're very fortunate to have about 32,000 items, documents, books, beautiful images of our people. And I love each and every one of them. And as you look at them, you're going to see them again represented within the art of our contemporary artists that we work with at Penn Center. And some of them go, of course, past then into the early 1900s. But from the ones that I'm showing now are from, no, this one's 1866. And you can see the beautiful coiled basket. Student at Penn School, you're going to see various ranges of students, of people attending the schools. You can see her winnowing the grain. I love this picture. This is Miss Adelaide. She's coming from the field, and you notice her very graceful stature with the basket on top of her head. And you can also see the hoe that she holds. She's had it also because she needs a little bit, or maybe she wants to clear the snakes away out of her path. She has her walking stick. And then also tied around her waist are 2 cords. And sometimes that's to give you support to your back, but also you can hike your skirt up a little bit to avoid the morning dew, your dress getting wet. And I'm just pointing these out because you'll see them again. This is Captain Dick. Oh, goodness, help me out. Oh, thank you, Captain Dick Middleton. Thank you, Ron. Is he one of your ancestors? Are you related? You're not related to him. Okay, he's coming out of the river, but this is definitely one of our iconic images, a very iconic islander. Living off the water and living off the land are very important to us. And you'll see that again. Now, our boat meant to Wassa Island. This is later on, of course, in 1929. I'm just giving you a little bit of what's in the collection. And like I said, there's 32,000 items. They're digitized, so you can reference them, go straight to them with Penn School papers. And many of the artists in our area do that. And then also there's this wonderful book called Face of an Island that was written by Judith Dabbs. And it is a beautiful representation of our people and the beauty of our culture. Many of the artists that we have in our area have utilized this book to recreate things, but they also have that memory already instilled within them. Beautiful picture. This is definitely passing on the trade of cast net making. And he's one of the instructors at Penn School, and he's just passing on the trade to it says passing on the art of making the shrimp net. We actually call them casting nets because we catch everything with them. Just cast them. That's one of the fondest memories that I have of my father, him teaching me how to cast a net and being able to put one part of it in your mouth with a T. And you kind of like, I hate to say like a golf stroke, but that's exactly kind of what it looks like. And you fling them, and the weights go down to the bottom of the water, and you catch a wonderful bounty. And these are hand sewn. We have very few people that can do this today on our island. We have, I'll get to that in just a moment, but this is also one of our instructors at Penn School, and he's outside of his home, and he's got the bulrush and some palmetto leaves with his grandson at his feet and just passing on that trade. Very important to incorporate the youth within being able to keep the culture going, passing on that torch. This is a postcard that, photos that were taken, and we had to help sustain, bring some monies into the school. So you had the baskets that were made to be sold to the community to make some money. And then also they wanted to educate people about Penn School and the need for funds, still the issue today. And so this is a postcard from Penn School, St. Helena Island, and this is about 1912. There was actually just a storm not too long ago that knocked down her chimney that was reaching and extending above the roof. And there's another picture that expresses that. Well, at Penn School, we started off purely on an academic basis, and then we started adding in the rich culture, art forms, and the industrial trades in 1901. And this picture is taken within the Cope Industrial Shop, which is now our York W. Bailey Museum. And these are the young men that were being taught the trade of basket making. At Penn School, only the males were taught. The instructor actually was learning from his grandmother, and I'm not exactly sure why they only taught the male students. But as you can see in the background, all of their baskets are made with some price tags to the side. And that hardy material, again, is bulrush. On the grounds, classrooms were held underneath the canopies of the trees. That 50-acre district, when people come to our campus to visit, they'll say, well, where's the schoolhouse? Where is the original schoolhouse? I said, these entire grounds. You're walking on sacred ground, and all of it is part of the schoolhouse. On a wonderful day, a beautiful day, you go under the canopy of a beautiful live oak, and you'll have your class. It could be a sewing class, a reading class, a writing class, the basket making class. And they just look so beautifully, just sitting there, just so beautiful right there on the campus. So, some of the culture, of course, we're talking about our rice culture. And one of these pieces here are made of the palmetto tree, the trunk of the trunk of the tree, and that's cut in half, and it's used to help beat the rice and get it ready to get the hulls off, and then you're getting ready to fan it. And this is very close to the campus, one of the gentlemen that lived very close to the campus. Now, here's the quote I was talking about earlier. If art is to nourish the roots of our culture, society must set the artist free to follow his vision wherever it takes him, by John F. Kennedy. And so what you will see next are the interpretation of artists within our area as it applies to the culture and as it applies to part of our collections that we have. So we have Mr. Michael Smalls and Dino Badger. A few that we work with. We have four different sweetgrass sowers that we work with on our campus. And we incorporate them within educational programs, after-school programs. Actually, we just got a wonderful grant to offer after-school teaching the traditional art forms along with contemporary art forms to youth on an after-school basis. This is on the grounds outside of our museum, and you can see how the tradition of making the baskets have transformed to more ornate pieces. This is a picture in the Cope Industrial Shop to the left, the black and white, and this is Mr. Michael Smalls, no relation. And you can even see, let me go back to that, you can even see the necklace around his neck is a sweetgrass. I was seeing today where we have some people today, Mrs. LaRoche, I'm sorry, has a beautiful earrings on with the sweetgrass incorporated. So we've come a long way with just pieces that we use for work and harvesting and storing to pieces that are just totally beautiful. I still use my baskets, I tell you. I put them out for decoration, but I also use them. And these are a collection that we still have of our Penn School baskets. And this is a basket of Mr. Michael Smalls. He calls it the elephant ear vase. Now, Michael Smalls and Dino Badger, whenever we have college presentations or youth presentations or any groups that come to visit Penn Center, we have to offer the educational component in teaching and demonstrating and giving talks and discussions. We were fortunate to be able to be contacted by the United Nations. Right now, the United Nations is celebrating their International Decade of People of African Descent. And there are 3 places that they chose to start off their decade of celebration with St. Helena Island, Savannah, and Zafuski Island. So they came to St. Helena Island first, and we were able to introduce them to farmers. We were also able to introduce them to people that are actually starting to grow and cultivate rice again. And then also, of course, our artisans. And this documentary is going to be coming out very shortly, and it's going to be extending through the decade. It started January of this year. And they're on the grounds at Penn Center as well. Mrs. Jerry Bennett Taylor has been working with Penn Center a very long time, also teaching the art form. And she has gone back to what the Penn School basket was when it was taught. And it's all bulrush and palmetto fronds that are used to sew the basket together. She's within our York W. Bailey Museum. Now, what is wonderful about Miss Jerry Taylor, she also has started to paint with acrylics. So you'll see a lot of her memory, a lot of her culture represented within not just the baskets, but also within the paintings. This is one that's a little bit more up close. She does have, of course, some of the pine needle in there, making the knots at the top. Now, we do have after-school classes that we're bringing back, but we've always had traditionally school field trips, and we always bring our artisans in to make sure that they're just passing this trade on, which is so very important. She's in the Frizzell Community House, one of our historic buildings on the campus, and youth from St. Helena Elementary School. And that's our local school. Mrs. Gilliard, we just had Africa Fashion Week in the Lowcountry, and it was a wonderful involvement. Penn Center was able to be partners for this. And so I just had to take a picture of this beautiful woman, Mrs. Gilliard. She's from Beaufort. And she has one of Jerry Bennett Taylor's sweetgrass purses that she's modeling. And you can just see how this art form is just becoming more and more and more beautiful. This is Jerry Bennett, one of her paintings, signed Jerry Bennett Taylor on the bottom, and she's harvesting. And I did not ask her if it's rice, but I'm almost certain it would be sweetgrass because of her art form. And of course, then we have more well-known artists, Mary Manigault, and then depicted in the bottom is also women sewing the baskets. And this is of Cassandra Gillens, who is next. Cassandra Gillens also is extremely very close to Penn Center. She has been featured with us as an exhibiting artist many times. And she's self-taught, however, she has gone back to get some education in color theory. And a lot of times people will tell you, if you're a self-taught artist, please don't ruin that. Some people will say that, but I don't think she's in any threat. Her artwork has been featured on HGTV in one of those wonderful houses that they give away. I think it was a house in Kiowa. And she's taken off wonderfully well in China. She's just doing outstanding in her depiction of our culture. Cassandra Miller Gillens. This is a piece that she was commissioned to do for Penn Center for our Heritage Day celebration. And it depicts our cottages that were built by the students in the background, the white cottages. And then also has the Cope Industrial Shop with the red roof. And then we are so blessed to have these wonderful and beautiful live oak trees on the campus. And I guess this is a picture in the fall. And so the students are outside catching the history, catching the learning, and also the men are learning, passing on the trade to the young man in the picture with the sweetgrass sewing. So this is one of the exhibits in the York W. Bailey Museum. One of the ways that we like to get the artists extremely involved with the curation of an exhibit, or design of the exhibit, I should say, we invite them to take part in it. So we have a lot of things within our archives that we can utilize to place with it. This time we paired Jerry Bennett's baskets that we have in our collection with the art, and then also some rice we had as well, and we were gifted from Sierra Leone, and then just different items within the whole exhibit. The young lady there is Layla Love. I shamefully put her in there. She's my daughter. She's one of the Penn Center after-school participants, and she goes everywhere that I go. So you're going to see her often. Forgive me. So this is still in the museum. You can see another section of the exhibit, and one is totally geared towards our Gullah Geechee culture, The other is geared towards blues and jazz, and then it goes on and on. And also about her memory of growing up in the city and coming home to South to visit her family. It is just categorized, and these students are coming from California to see the exhibit and visit Penn Center. We are so fortunate that we have every state that is visited except for South Dakota. And we're looking for that. Anyone in here from South Dakota? We're hoping you'll come down to Penn Center so we can get you within our guest registry. And then also about 62 nations and territories. We were just able to do our visitor search and go through our digitized directory and our handwritten directory and put all that together. And now we have to just start focusing on how many come from this country, how many come from this. So we're working on that. We partner wonderfully well with the Red Piano 2 Art Gallery. Mary Anabinette Mack, she is a student that attended Penn School. She's from Colleton County. She was the first board member, female board member on the Penn Center Board of Trustees. She's back on the Board of Trustees. She's just a great partner to have. The Red Piano 2 Art Gallery represents between 100 and 125 artists. It's been known for as a folk art gallery, but they have a lot of fine artists as well, and a lot of Gullah artists and Gullah lifestyle painters. And there goes Layla again with a Senegalese basket on her head. I don't know why, but that have African heritage coming out. She was practicing up and down the hallway, walking elegantly and proud. And this is another one of Cassandra Gilling's poems. We are also fortunate. I like to talk about the partners that we have because it makes our outreach so much better. We're improving upon that, and also helps with getting our artists recognition. So we had Lonnie Bunch from the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture, and we were able to take him on the grounds for a tour during our Heritage Day celebration. During that time period, it's coming up November 12th through the 14th, just a plug. And you'll see another plug in the presentation. But we were able to take him around and personally introduce him to the artists that we had represented that day. He was taking this tour, unofficial and official tour of the Gullah community on Hilton Head Island and St. Helena Island, Defusky Island, trying to name a few more. And we were just grateful to have him there. They have been partnering with us for quite some time. If you've been to Penn Center, can you raise your hand if you have? You've been to our York W. Bailey Museum. It still looks the same. However, the Smithsonian is wonderfully responsible, and Dr. Bunch is wonderfully responsible for sending us his curators and some of his directors to help us redesign our museum. We have a wonderful outline of you coming into West Africa and Sierra Leone, then having a larger representation of Gullah Geechee culture in the main exhibit area, and then you can step into Penn School. You can even come to the campus very soon and research your teachers, your family that may have taught, or students that may have attended. We're making that more accessible to people so they don't have to go to the University of Chapel Hill, the Wilson Library, to go look it up. They are our archival institution. They're nationally ranked. And a lot of people want us to bring things home. We do have some artifacts within our museum that are authentic. We do have a lot of reproductions. However, being in the area that we are and being in the building that we have that is not climatized, we're at risk for them deteriorating quicker. So they go to Chapel Hill for now. So that artist was Geraldine Smith. Another wonderful partners that we have, of course, is the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor, and then also the South Carolina Arts Commission. And we're so very to have had forums and workshops on how to promote your Gullah Geechee art form. And I'm going to get to a few of them right now. So you'll have professional training workshops. We've had one. And then they go around to different areas to meet the needs of people in different areas as well. We have some artists that we've worked in the past. Joe Pinckney, very important artist, and then also John W. Jones. He has done a wonderful job at recapturing the buildings, the historic buildings on Penn Center's campus, and then also with how he just depicts the culture. You can find him primarily in Charleston, and you can just see the beauty of the area. Has the sweet grass hat on. Sam Doyle. Sam Doyle is a Gullah American artist god. This is him. He's from St. Helena Island, and this is his one area of his outdoor art gallery. Sam Doyle is so very important to St. Helena Island because he chronicled not only the history of the island and some of the nation's history, but also the first, and then also our culture. For example, he has the first midwife, his Mrs. Ladson. He's also done the first police officer, the first root doctor, the first motor car in St. Helena Island. He's well known for that, but also depicting some of the folklore that are within our culture, some of the superstitions and some of the folklore that is told. So right behind him is a picture of a figure, a figure holding his head. It looks black with a white background right by his head, and it's a picture of the whooping boy, and he's lost his head. And so at a certain time of the year, he goes out whoop, 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 whooping, looking for maybe his head, I'm not sure. Sam Doyle would dress up every single day. He became so very well known. He had a sign-in. Anytime someone from another country would come and visit his outdoor gallery, he would sign in Denmark on this big old outdoor sign. Many things were done on wood, on plywood. A lot of things were done on recycled roof tin. Anything he could get his hands on, placemats, tablecloths, a boot, bark, anything. Penn Center became pretty involved in helping him because there were some people that were starting to take advantage of him. He would sell art for $25, $50, and he'd just nail it to the fence or nail it to a building. And I remember, I was very young, but he had a neighbor by the name of Virginia Green, and we used to go to her house often as a family, and he lived very close to her. And I would see these figures with the head cut off, and I would see surgical procedures done in painting, and it was just a very scary thing, and I just didn't want to go in his yard. It's unfortunate that people thought that he was crazy or he couldn't get right, because these very paintings that you see depicted right here are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we're going to go on. So this is one of the pieces. He's depicting an undertaker in 1916, the first undertaker on St. Helena Island. Now, it's also nice to know that the first motor car on St. Helena Island, depicted by Sam Doyle, was a funeral car, a hearse. So I guess you needed that at a certain time period. Yeah, so he's the undertaker, and in the back of his cart, he has someone that he's about to place in the ground. So you saw this picture earlier of Miss Adelaide, and this is Sam Doyle's depiction of her. At that time, we already had the book out, Face of an Island, and this is one of the images that was prominently depicted in that book. And he got a hold of it, and definitely this is his interpretation of the photograph. This particular piece is done on vinyl, on a tablecloth or placemat. I cannot recall right at the moment. We worked with our Beaufort County Arts Council. We do that often. And we decided it was time to let our community know more about Sam Doyle. And that his main purpose on having this outdoor gallery is to provide a history lesson to his people and to the children in the neighborhood, to the islanders. And then his wife also had a general store, and he wanted to attract people, customers to the store. But he said, but he also stated that he wanted it to be a history lesson. And so he did that. The children, along with, we had elementary school, middle school, and high school students paint their thoughts of how they saw Sam Doyle's art. And we wanted them to be in this painting, in this book right here. It's called Local Hero, Paintings and Sculptures by Sam Doyle. And that was out by the High Museum. And we supplied teachers' lessons, this book, some video PowerPoints of Sam Doyle's work. And we gave that to every art teacher in our district and any others that asked. And the children the youth created these beautiful pieces. Because of that partnership, every year now we have a Sam Doyle festival, a Sam Doyle Folk Arts Festival. And we'll be having our second Sam Doyle Folk Art Festival in 2016 in March. Part of the Sam Doyle Folk Art Festival, the first one that we had, we invited community art artists to come and demonstrate their work and talk with the students that were in the area. This is Minister Johnny Simmons. Minister Johnny Simmons is very, very important right now as well. He has come up with an art form called Gullah wood burning, a newer form. But he is taking some of the spirituals and also his memory of growing up Gullah on St. Helena Island and putting them within his wood burning, and then also painting with acrylics. And I think Mary Mack, the owner of the Red Piano 2, is placing an order. I'm not sure. So this is Mary Mack in her gallery, the Red Piano 2, and she's pictured by one of her art pieces. She's an artist as well. Her most wonderful theme that she depicts as women in water and children. It's just, that water element is just so healing for her and many of the artists. Her art gallery is so unassuming from the outside, but it's ceiling to floor art. Ceiling to floor. It's in the Corners community on St. Helena Island at the second traffic light. The second and only other traffic light on St. Helena. I've learned so much from this woman. I considered her like a third mother because I have a mother and a stepmother. She would be my third mother. I learned so much about Gullah art, community art, folk art, fine art. I became a collector, trying to follow behind her and loving the pieces here. When you meet the artists personally, you become connected to them, and then you just have to have a piece of theirs. And that's how I've built my collection. I just have to have a piece. So at her gallery, she partnered with us during the folk arts, the Sam Doyle Folk Arts Festival, and she had her artists recreate some of the Sam Doyle pieces. And so you can see on the cover of the High Museum book was Sam Doyle painting, and that's one. And then this one here is another Gullah artist by Sandra Renee Smith. You'll see her in a moment. And she recreated St. Helena's last midwife. And then we also have this right here, Brotherhood. And he depicted this quite a bit because he wanted to bring together the races. He thought that through Gullah tradition and culture, rice culture, that if you feed someone and you bring them to your table, all will be well. That's one of the things that I've learned within my community and my culture, that you can be a stranger for a moment, and then you're inviting them to your house. You got beans and rice on the stove cooking, and you offer them something, and they're hooked. So this is a representation of some of the artists that were paying tribute to Sam Doyle. Now, Sam Doyle, let me go back to this. In last April, You know, all of the people that would laugh at him or be afraid of him or never purchased a piece of art. One of his pieces, they can just hurt themselves right now because one of his pieces last year auctioned off for $204,000. Yes. And actually that was St. Helena's first midwife. On roofing tin, with house paint. And most of his paintings were with enamel, house paint. $204,000. So when we were at the presentation before, we were talking about how people will look at art and say, oh, I can do that. My kindergartners can do that. And I chuckle inside when that's said, because we have a lot of self-taught artists that paint because they have to. They have to get something out. They have a story to tell. And it's just so compelling that it comes out in so many ways. One of the traditional art forms of our culture is the making of bateaux, the flat-bottom boats. We call them bateaux. And Penn School taught this art form. And then we have one of our elders that have passed on, Mr. Samuel Moutry. He's at Penn Center Heritage Days showing the craftsmanship on how to build a bateau. We have about 5 of his bateaux, and actually we're picking about 3 artists. We're keeping 2 natural, and we're picking 3 artists to, hopefully inviting 3 artists to paint them, or to wood burn them, or to recreate them in a Gullah way. This is one of the exhibits, a temporary exhibit that we have. We brought one of the bateaux in and also one of our casting nets within the museum space. A lot of people, when they saw that exhibit, they said, I'm not getting in that. It doesn't look well made. They're exceptionally well made. And I would get in it. I've been in one. My daddy would take us out in them on Saturdays. So if you go out on a bateau, you have to have your casting net. And so this is one of our gentlemen that, Fripp. I'm looking at Ron like he's going to help me. But he's sewing the casting net here. And then we also have Mr. Joseph Cripp Legree, who is still with us today. He's a master cast net maker. He's been recognized by the state of South Carolina. And he has an apprentice, and then we also bring him in to do demonstrations as well. So we're still trying to keep that promotion of the traditional art forms. Arian King Comer, we work with her often with indigo batik making, and we always bring in students and adults to learn and be able to take a piece back with them of this art form. And she'll incorporate different signs and symbols within West African culture as well. I was mentioning Minister Johnny Simmons earlier. Now, he's someone that has to paint for therapeutic reasons. That's how he started. And he's a Vietnam veteran. And he started painting because he was suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome and needed an outlet. And one day, as he was visiting the Walmart, he went to go get his tire changed, and it was taking a little bit too long. So he went into the craft section and he found some wood and a wood burning tool. And he's like, I remember doing something like this in the VA hospital to keep my mind occupied. So he got that equipment and took it home and started playing with it. He loved the grain of the wood, the natural flow of the grain in the wood. So he would incorporate that within his art pieces for the most part. And then he just adds the beautiful, vibrant colors that are so reminiscent within the culture that we have. As I said, he's going to be burning in some scripture, some folklore, some Gullah tradition, and there's also the beauty of the area. You can see the bateau, the flat-bottom boat. You can see a baptismal happening. And you can also see the beautiful agriculture with those straight rows. I have another shameless plug here. This photograph here is of my father as a Penn School student. And I just wanted to show that the only thing they have to do with one another is the culture and that they're from the island. But that's my father pulling the plow with some of the other students. This was 1941. He graduated in 1943. We bring in our artisans, and as well as Minister Johnny Simmons, bring them in to demonstrate and to teach the art form. And he's in our museum and outside of our museum just doing his thing. He doesn't mind working in public places and being able to pass along the knowledge and people asking him questions at all. But you can always see him totally focused. And so we try not to bother him. We think it's something he might slip if we interrupt him, but he's known for his gullah wood burnings. I do not know anyone else that does gullah wood burnings except for Minister Simmons. This is another piece. Him outside with some of the youth. And it's so vital to be able to pass this on to the youth. I was just speaking with someone earlier, and they said, well, how do we keep this going? And it all starts with our youth and passing it on and passing on that torch. This is one of the pieces I was talking about, how he shows off the grain of the wood, the more natural grain of the wood. Now, a newer artist that's in our area is Mary Juka Ferris. He's an art professor coming from SCAD and also our local USC, University of South Carolina, Beaufort. He is a mixed media artist, and he came to Penn Center very early and stated that, you know, he wanted to recreate some of the images that we have within our archives. I wasn't at Penn Center at that time, and but you can see it over and over and over again, his images that have been recreated. And this is called Rice Dance. And then also Miss Green. Layla Love again. So every second Saturday, we open our museum up to our Beaufort County residents to enter, have free admission. And on those second Saturdays, we like to have our artists come and demonstrate and do demonstrations and talks to engage learners. And so he didn't mind Layla painting. And this was a piece that was to be auctioned off for a charity. And he texted her and told her, guess how much our art piece sold for? And Layla was just blown away. And he actually allowed her to paint on it. Do you see the drips within the painting? He says that that's to show the passing of time. He does that from time to time. And so it really didn't matter that Layla had a glob that was dripping down the paint. It just added to it. The campus is beautiful. And so to have artists outside being able to demonstrate is perfect. This is another piece within the museum, paired with Michael Small's urn. It's a bowl on a vase, on a pedestal, sorry. Another Mary Ferris with a Jerry Taylor. And I can tell the baskets who the artist is. Now, Mary has taken some elements and has translated them to more commercial pieces. And this is a board, it's not a surfing board, it's a paddle board. So you won't really surf on this, but you'll paddle on it. And there's some Lowcountry things that are within here, and he has others that have some more Lowcountry and Gullah within it. So I just wanted to show that picture to see some more traditional, some more contemporary forms. This is another one of his pieces with the boatmen again, our ferrymen before we got our bridges. Diane Britton Dunham is not a Gullah woman. She's coming from the city, I believe. Her love, when she moved into this area, you can't help but to fall in love with the beauty. That's why so many people move here. So she just fell in love with the area and the people and the culture, and you can see that come through within her art. You have the quilts. In many of her pieces, she depicts, has quilts, she has sweetgrass baskets, she's along the shore. And a lot of them incorporate women, themes of love, and you can see her in her studio at home. She started off in the Red Piano 2 Art Gallery. This is another one of her pieces, and she has looked at some of our archives as well and has incorporated that into her themes. Charles Henry Desaussures from Charleston. Wonderful artist. I'm sorry that I don't have more of his artwork that represents the Gullah culture. He is Gullah. He passed away about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And he also has wonderful work at the Red Piano too, and has partnered with Penn Center as well. And he started off as a sign painter, a professional sign painter, and has just blossomed. The work that he creates has so much detail. If you ever get a chance to Google any of these artists, definitely Google his work.
Mary has a lot of his work.
And Mack has a lot of his work. And of course, just the photography that is so beautiful. Photography is so very important, and the aerial shots of the rice fields are exceptional. You can see this hanging on your wall at your home because it's just breathtaking. And people incorporate this within their artwork. Sandra Renee Smith is from St. Helena Island, and she also paints as a therapeutic process. And she is painting women in water and her Gullah culture, what she sees and what she remembers as well. She's a featured artist for our Heritage Day celebration that's coming up, and it's called Coming Home. So some of the folks that leave, they're so very blessed to be able to have a home to come back to. And that's really what Heritage Days is about. It's about a homecoming. We used to bring about 20,000 people to the Heritage Day celebration. With the boycott of the flag that was up and no longer up, we had a decline. And then also, just as times have gone on, we've seen a significant decline. And right now we're at about 9,000 people in attending our three-day celebration. We definitely invite you to come. These are some of the artists, a few more of the women artists that we have within the York W. Bailey Museum. Behind them is our permanent exhibit, Education for Freedom. And it really depicts 1861 through the Citizenship School era. And that's a precursor to the Civil Rights Movement. And it's just wonderful images and artifacts from the school time. We have Sandra Renee Smith, St. Helena Islander, Claudette Humphrey. She paints Gullah themes, but like I said, when you come to this area, she's a Kamya, you fall in love. And then you start painting what you see here. Sabri is in North Carolina, but she has pieces that are featured in Charleston now, as well as on St. Helena Island. And we always love bringing our artists in over and over and over and over again to celebrate them. Another artist that depicts the Gullah form beautifully is Judy Mooney. She's a sculptor, and you can see her here within the York W. Bailey Museum sculpting a bust of Jerry Taylor, the sweetgrass basket sewer. And this is during an artist retreat at Penn Center. And this is one of her pieces of the rice pounder that she has gifted Penn Center. These are what she calls her Gullah cottages. And she has taken some of the images from different African American pictorial collections and has incorporated them within the cottages as well. So, people are just compelled. Once they fall in love with the culture, they're compelled and want to be able to depict and share the images. And Johnny Griner is one of them. Johnny Griner first started off at the Red Piano too, and he was so in love with Jonathan Green's work that he started recreating Jonathan Green's work. And really, recreating Jonathan Green's work. And so the owner, Mary Mack, she felt a little way about that, and she's like, that there's a story you have in your community that you can share. And he's coming in, he's also from Colleton County, so Gullah culture is there. And so she just really just wanted to help him blossom and shine. So what did we do with the Jonathan Green pieces? We purchased them for ourselves. And we have them hanging in various places. Mary Mack has a couple of houses, so she has some in another house and one, and I have a couple. And this is the Gullah store in the community, and he has fallen in love with the culture and depicts it in this way. This is one of the images. And of course, we have Mr. Jonathan Green himself. You cannot speak about Gullah art without bringing him into the conversation. One of the most important American artists that speaks to Lowcountry and our culture. I do not have an original yet, but I will be blessed to get one day. I'm serious. I'm saving up. But of course, you know what we can afford are the lithographs and the wonderful prints. I started off as an artist before I knew that I could afford art. I had to educate myself. I was pretty ignorant to the fact that I could afford art. So I got the calendars, I matted them and I framed them and I hung them in my house, Jonathan Green calendars. And I was just like, you know, I want my children to experience original art. And so I would tear out model pictures out of magazines and I would paint them, or I would use the pastels and recreate them based off photos. And I started framing those and hanging those, and I started getting compliments. Then I started getting way too many to hang in the house. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to get rid of these. So I went to the Red Piano 2 Art Gallery and I said, I'm a local artist. Can you look at some art and see if you'd like to sell some? And I wasn't feeling very positive. I just thought maybe they might take one or two. And they started grabbing one and putting it over and grabbing one and putting over. And I said, oh, they're not going to take any. And so Mary Mack, she said, oh, we're going to take all of them and we're going to hang them. And then little by little, I started getting checks in the mail. And then I got a note that says, all of them are gone, make some more. and I did that because I wanted my children to see original art, like I said. But I didn't value it, within. So you give them away, and you sell them for $50, and Mary Mack was like, no. So she was one of my third customers. And it really instilled a sense of pride within me because I went to her home to see her installation, her collection. It's an installation within itself. And I was like, wow, I'm good enough to be in this collection. Okay, I'm doing something. So we also have Phillip Simmons, of course, our iconic blacksmith. A very important work that he has, extremely important. And you talk about our culture and how you see it within these grand estates, palatial places, and you go around and like, oh my goodness, all I can really afford is the Phillip Simmons jewelry to hang around my neck. And the foundation is wonderful. We partner with them and we bring them in to demonstrate blacksmithing. And a more contemporary form, my son, Christopher, he's a graduate of Winthrop University, and he fell in love with Phillip Simmons, and he has incorporated it in a way that he sees fit. So the rendering behind him is his creation. Then he just installed this last week at a Federal Credit Union in Rock Hill. They commissioned him to do a piece. And so he's like, Mom, I'm walking in the footsteps. I feel like that Phillip Simmons is here with me, and it's different. It's totally different form. But he goes everywhere with me, and you can't help but to paint what you see and to create what you see. And this is another piece of his. He calls it altered books, and he takes older books that have a yellowing and a nice moldy smell, and he picks out a page that he loves, and he depicts these beautiful oak trees in our Lowcountry. And he does pretty well with them. And I love them so. So that's pen and ink on book pages called altered books. And then this is called woven oak. It shows more of an angel oak with the branches falling down. And he's taken those same book pages and he's woven the pages and then created the ink on top. And after going through Face of an Island, like many of the artists do, that beautiful book, he created a piece, Conjure Woman. And bringing in he has some rice, And he has the basket, the sweetgrass basket, on top of her, adorning her head. Ever since Penn School was founded, well, and that you have Gullah students there, but in 1901 is when we really started incorporating the industrial trades and Gullah forms of art. And you can see the students outside with their baskets that they've created, their carpentry pieces that they've created. And still today we're making sure that our youth and youth from other areas are getting to know these art forms. These are Ndinkra symbols within the West African culture. And then also another historic image on the grounds making baskets. And students at Penn, more of our historic images. So I really want you to, if you ever have time, to Google Penn School Papers. It's a scrolling document, lots of verbiage there, but beautiful images. Some of the visitors to the museum. Heritage Days again. So if you want a wonderful representation of area artists and African artists, you should come to the Heritage Day celebration. They're all congregating and converging there during this time period, the 12th through the 14th of this year. And this is the end of my presentation, and I'll be happy to take questions later.